Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad that you're taking the time to view this session for the Steaming It Up conference and hope that you'll enjoy and learn from this content. My name is Kim Spiker, and I'm one of the Illinois MTSS Network's capacity coaches in the Central area. Our targets for today's session are to understand how implementing MTSS as a system can improve outcomes for all students and to evaluate your current MTSS and make a plan for next steps. As we get started, I'd like you to consider this question. What would it take to get learning growth for every student every year in your school? What would need to change? School staff often think about how to improve outcomes for students overall, but I think this is a little bit of a different way of looking at it. If schools commit to getting growth for every student every year, we have to ask ourselves if our system and our school are set up to encourage that to happen. A main tenet of MTSS is that we believe students can succeed when instruction matches their needs. When we think about needs, we're considering these 6 categories. Our goal is to provide support that's aligned to student needs, no matter how diverse those needs are. The structures within our schools can either help or hinder that success. The way schools have sought to meet those student needs has changed over the years. Many of you will remember the original academic RTI triangle configured in the early 2000s. You can see the 3 tiers and the fact that tier 1, the green, was intended to be the largest, with only a few students needing the intensive support at tier 3. It didn't take very long for educators to realize that their triangles didn't and still may not look like this. So we began to see the inclusion of tiered behavior supports, but still separate from the academic for a few more years before there was a shift to the term MTSS and blended models started to appear. This addition supported the fact that many students who struggle academically do so because they have behavior needs and vice versa. The two-sided triangle worked fairly well for a while, but then educators once again began to notice their students had other needs that weren't being met by the current system of supports. Later, there was a shift to that blended the sides of the supports and removed the silos of academics and behavior to emphasize a continuum of supports, giving students what they need as they need it, and to use a whole child perspective to better serve students. In Illinois, MTSS blends academic and social-emotional behavior learning supports, but adds in system pieces required for everything to work together: systems, data, and practices. MTSS includes all the resources we have and organizes them to support all students. In this triangle, you can see some of what is often included within an MTSS: parent engagement, curriculum design and instruction, post-secondary goals, educator professional learning, school and community collaboration, and teamwork. These would all be part of a continuum of tiered supports designed to use all available resources to meet students' needs. At the Illinois MTSS Network, we also add database decision-making, system evaluation, and strong school and district leadership. We look at the entire system in order to meet the needs of the whole child. We propose that all needs and services in a school can be supported through differentiated or tiered support. When I work with schools, I explain that everything we do is to support students, so everything falls under MTSS. Let's compare how a few of the components of RTI and MTSS serve students. From the bottom up, we can see again that RTI provided only academic support, while MTSS addresses all areas of need. This meant that support was given only through intervention and remediation, and only to students at risk or those who have been identified as needing special education services. Within MTSS, systemic support is provided for core instruction, acceleration, intervention, and remediation. There's something for everyone to get what they need when they need it. One area that wasn't addressed at all through RTI was continuous improvement. We'll see in a few minutes how continuous improvement is interwoven into every aspect of MTSS. I mentioned that in Illinois, we consider MTSS to be a system. We often begin work with schools demonstrating how these 6 domains function as one whole to achieve the common purpose of better outcomes for students. RTI focused on the domains of 3-tiered instruction and intervention, maybe data and evaluation, and individual or small group data-based problem solving. But with MTSS, we incorporate the other 3 domains of leadership, capacity and infrastructure, and communication and collaboration. MTSS is much broader than RTI and can be applied to support more needs within a school system than RTI can, which improves sustainability and practices. I expect several of you have experienced practitioners drifting away from RTI practices or abandoning them altogether. Implementing each of the 6 domains well at the same time provides a better chance of long-term success. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper into the definition and best practices of each of the domains. I've included a QR code and link to this on the slide to access a note catcher document that can help you keep track of your thoughts and ideas as we go through the domains. As you review your notes later, they may also help lead you to some action steps to take back to school for conversations in the fall. I invite you to pause the recording, if you'd like, to provide time to reflect and capture your thoughts. I've learned through doing this activity many times that the reflective and sharing conversations are very valuable and informative for teams. So if you have the opportunity to share these next sets of slides with your team and discuss, I think you'll get a lot out of that. The first domain is leadership. Leadership is the key to successful implementation of any large-scale innovation, including MTSS. When this domain is fully implemented, the building principal, assistant principal, and building leadership team are critical advocates for implementing MTSS at the district and school level. They engage staff in ongoing professional learning around MTSS, plan strategically for implementation, and model data-based problem solving at all tiers for school improvement. The school principal also supports implementation of MTSS by communicating a vision and mission to school staff, providing resources for planning and implementing instruction and intervention, and ensuring that staff has the data they need for data-based problem solving. It's also important to note that implementation of MTSS must be a school-wide effort. Teachers can also be leaders and need to be part of the process of implementation. The building leadership team may lead implementation, but everyone is responsible and accountable to implement the plan and achieve the desired results. If you'd like now, you can pause the recording and take a few notes on the note catcher. The next domain is capacity and infrastructure. This domain is about creating organizational structures and processes which allow implementation of decisions, as well as ensuring all employees have the necessary understanding and skill sets to enable them to implement decisions and practices. Within the domain of capacity and infrastructure, there are many features. Ensuring that there is a systematic plan for providing professional learning and coaching is one of the key areas for successful implementation. Data and feedback from staff inform the development and ongoing review of the plan. The schedule must provide for collaborative teaming opportunities, professional learning activities, as well as provide for flexible student groupings. Developing an effective schedule can be challenging, but very rewarding once it's implemented. It's often necessary to think outside of the regular schedule that schools have had for years to get some of these items in. I recommend finding staff with an interest and aptitude for puzzles to help with the schedule. Written procedures, processes, and decision rules provide clear expectations for all stakeholders, including families, involved in the process of implementing MTSS. Another important piece to consider for the infrastructure is allocation of resources. This is an area to really think equity over equality. Our purpose within MTSS is to serve all students to reach the highest outcomes. This may sometimes mean that one school or one department has a greater need based on data and therefore needs more resources. This isn't always easy for staff to get behind, but it's an important piece of getting to learning for every student every year. I often see the communication and collaboration domain as an area of growth for schools and districts. How often do you look back at a situation that went wrong and determine it was caused by a lack of communication or consensus? It seems like no matter how much we attempt to communicate and give stakeholders a voice, there's always a part we miss. Work in this domain can minimize those frustrating times. Consensus building is a highly effective strategy that builds and sustains an effective practice beyond initial implementation. While it's important to communicate the why and how of a plan, the opportunity to collaborate in the development of the plan, sharing and actively contributing ideas, builds consensus and leadership capacity throughout your organization. This is often the place where beliefs and attitudes are addressed as stakeholders are asked to move through the stages of change. Discussing and coming to consensus are key steps in building an effective MTSS. Using a survey to assess current staff attitudes around implementation or change in practice can be valuable and can be tied to professional learning and coaching support. In fact, research shows that student success is higher where families are involved in and support their children's learning at home. Schools would have to spend $1,000 more per pupil in order to equal the effect in student achievement seen through family involvement. Even improvements in literacy are seen when families become involved in the school lives of their students. Schools need to build their own capacity for family and community involvement and support an ongoing partnership. Finally, transparent and frequent review of data will support the ongoing development of MTSS and increase the likelihood that practices will be implemented and sustained. Database problem solving, simply put, is the process of using a variety of data to inform decisions and improve teaching and learning. We use database problem solving information from Dr. Victoria Bernhardt, and if you'd like more information on that, I recommend that you look up her book. The domain of database problem solving is key to the implementation of MTSS. We want to create a data culture where the why behind the collection and use of data is clearly explained and understood. In order to make quality decisions with data, the results need to be trusted by those decision makers. The culture of your school around decision making should always call for the evidence needed to make the decisions, that data you collect to answer the questions. As you think about database problem solving, give some thought to how you might support your staff to trust the data being used. Data-based problem solving is more than just having data at our tables, in our buildings, or in a binder or database. It's a process that should be used at all levels of decision making. It can be used for decisions at the district or building level with regard to the system. It's a process that can be used for decisions at the department, grade, classroom, small group, or even individual level. It's a process that can be used to inform our decisions about program effectiveness, communication, practices we choose, learning we want to access, and even supports for individual students. Another important aspect of the data-based problem-solving domain is to ensure you see the whole story of your data by reviewing and analyzing multiple measures of data in the areas of demographics, perception, school and district processes, and student learning. When using data to make decisions, we want to use a clear problem-solving process that includes identifying why a problem exists, so that whatever we plan to do aligns with the root cause. Having a clear decision-making process and decision guidelines or rules allows for equity and consistency in the application of support. A final thought on data-based problem solving is to be sure that all data is reviewed for student groups, as well as the whole school or district, in order to identify patterns and trends and improve equity. Using a problem-solving approach in this way allows you to identify and address the true barriers and intervene in a way that will be impactful for everyone. Three-tiered instruction and intervention is the domain most people are familiar with. It was the beginning application of RTI. In a typical system, Tier 1 or universal includes instruction delivered to all students. Tier 2 or targeted includes supplemental instruction or intervention that is additional to Tier 1 and is provided to students not meeting benchmarks. And Tier 3, or intensive, includes intensive, small group, or individual interventions for students facing significant barriers to learning the skills required for school success. In other words, a tiered system refers to having supports for all, some, and few, which is responsive to student needs. An important difference of tiered support within an MTSS is that Tier 1 includes acceleration for those students who have already met established benchmarks. When we think about an effective three-tiered system, we generally think about these components. We first identify the level of performance students should attain to be successful. Next, we consider how to measure their current level of performance and decide what we will do if they exceed, meet, or have additional needs. We use evidence-based practices with fidelity to deliver high-quality instruction and differentiate to meet students' needs. We use assessment, formative, diagnostic, and/or progress monitoring to evaluate progress and adjust instruction as appropriate. All of this is done seamlessly in an effective and impactful system. Our purpose, the why behind a tiered system of instruction and intervention, is to elicit equitable growth for all students, including those with disabilities. In order to use data effectively, school staff need to understand and have access to aggregated and disaggregated academic, behavior, and social-emotional data sources with clear visual displays that address the four purposes of assessment. We start with screening data to identify students at risk academically, behaviorally, socially, and/or emotionally. Diagnostic data to determine why a student is at risk. Progress monitoring data to monitor growth and progress, as well as inform instructional and intervention planning. And finally, outcome data that determines student attainment of goals and the effectiveness of programs. The domain of data and evaluation is all about the use of data to improve student outcomes and to continuously improve the operation, policies, programs, practices, and procedures at the district and building level. Schools and districts with strong data and evaluation practices use data not only to assess student progress, but to evaluate the critical elements of MTSS and ensure that it's being implemented as intended. This thought is a bit off topic, but I think it captures an aspect of all the domains. If we're going to put in the effort and resources to effectively implement a multi-tiered system of support, we want it to be impactful and sustainable. So we need to do evaluation for things like the system, those programs and processes that we have going on. We have to evaluate instruction. Are we having the impact that we want to have with students? How are our SEL and behavior programs and processes working? What's our classroom management look like? Data culture and usage and other things. We use ongoing professional development and coaching around these areas or other areas based on the data that we have in order to evaluate our impact and make changes as necessary. I know that was a lot of information and your brain may be a little tired from all the thinking and comparing and planning, but that's a good thing. We're not too far from wrapping up the session, but I'd like to take just a moment to share these elements for supporting change. If you've been working in a school for any length of time, I'm sure you've experienced the challenge of change. When we're trying to implement change, an important first step is to provide a why for the change and begin to build a level of consensus. We don't need to have 100% of stakeholders on board to begin the work. But consensus is really the cornerstone for system change, so we want as much as possible. Starting with consensus helps to build shared beliefs and creates a culture where everyone understands the value of the proposed change and why it's important. This means they will support the work, or at least not sabotage it. Once the work begins, decisions about infrastructure that may need to be revised or built can be aligned to the combined values and beliefs of the school and district. This results in improved attention to the quality of infrastructure development, those practices and processes, because invested stakeholders make shared decisions aligned with the core values they hold in common. Having strong and effective infrastructure in place before moving on with the change results in improved fidelity of implementation and therefore sustainability, because the stakeholders believe in the system and share a stake in its success. As you identify items you'd like to take back to school and work with your team to implement, I invite you to think about these three pieces in your planning. Thinking through how to address each of them will make the change easier to implement and increase the likelihood of success and sustainability. Here is Illinois' definition of MTSS. We consider MTSS to be a framework for continuous improvement that is systemic, prevention-focused, and data-informed, providing a coherent continuum of supports responsive to meet the needs of all learners. As you think about this definition and the words that might have jumped out at you as I read it, how does this definition connect to your school's current MTSS implementation? In what areas might you consider making a change? MTSS is an integrated framework. Everything in this definition can and does apply to academics and social, emotional, and behavioral growth. Nowhere does it say this is just academic or just non-academic. What it says is that our structures need to be flexible, fluid, and adaptive in response to data at the school, classroom, and student levels. We know that Rome wasn't built in a day, and the same is true for your MTSS framework. There are a lot of things to consider, much planning to do well, and there will be barriers to overcome. I encourage you to remember this image. All 6 of the domains need to be put in place and working well together in order for your system to function as you want it to. When time is short and people are tired, remember that if one stone is missing or one domain in your system is not functioning effectively, the whole system may begin to crumble. If that happens, stop and reflect on which domains are weak and put your focus there. Our students are worth it, so we can't give up. I'll leave you with this final thought from Erica Thiemann at ISB. The important piece is all students and all student groups equally succeeding with what you're doing. And if they're not, the adults in your system have some work to do. I think we can agree that all of our systems have some work that we can be doing. I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to join us at our new inaugural MTSS Bootcamp. It will be 2 days in August in Bloomington. And the target audience here is new hires or staff who are going to be involved in implementing MTSS in a new way. We're going to be talking about kind of the process all through the year, what it looks like at the tiers, and even what it looks like for different roles within a building. We'll have 2 in-person days and then 2 90-minute virtual check-ins throughout the next school year. Registration is available at our website, and I hope that you'll have the opportunity to join us. That will wrap things up for us today. Again, I'd like to thank you so much for attending the session. I hope that you picked up a couple of nuggets that you can take back to school and think about implementing within your own system. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, please reach out to me at kspiker@niu.edu and have a fantastic day.